Yes, for the last year, we have watched Israel as it has carried out an all-out genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And they've gone through this day in and day out. And yet somehow it's still shocking to watch Israel take this level of terror and turn it towards Lebanon, turn it towards a sovereign country that is supposed to be protected under international law, and target schools and hospitals and civilians. And it just goes to show that as long as they are allowed to continue on in this way, that's exactly what they're going to do. And, you mentioned Iran's retaliation. I know that there was it seemed like a lot of anticipation of, okay, what is Iran going to do? Are they going to get involved on their end? They did carry out this missile strike targeting military and security sites within Israel. And now you've got Israel saying that they are going to respond, that they're planning some sort of attack. And then you've got Iran saying, don't do this. We tried to warn you. It's going to escalate more and more each time we retaliate and respond. So, how do you view the current tensions right now? Is there any pulling back on Israel from just carrying out attack after attack?
I think the Israelis want Americans to enter the war. The whole objective is to create a regional war. That's what Netanyahu wants. That's what his government wants. He doesn't care about the Americans or the Europeans or the oil markets uh, or anything like that. He only cares about his own survival, and the people around him are the fanatics that we all know who they are. So I don't have to go into detail about that. But they 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 are pushing it. The invasion of Lebanon is it is destroying Israel. The biggest losers are Israel. I think the Iranian missile strike was a serious defeat for the Israelis, and the Iranians warned that if they strike Iran again, they'll hit much harder. And the Iranians have now they've come onto the battlefield, and once you begin something, then the mood changes. Once the Iranians now are ready. Before, people were discussing, what's going to happen. Now that the Iranians carried out the strike, they say, well, okay, you hit us, we hit you again, even harder. So the Israelis and then Hezbollah, we've seen that they've succeeded on the battlefield. Their military capabilities are untouched. They've lost a few commanders, but that's Beirut. On the ground, on the battlefield, everything is very well protected. Beirut has always been a very different place because Beirut is a city of espionage. It's always been like that. Western embassies, Western NGOs, many Western mainstream journalists, and all these refugees. It's a city where it's almost impossible to keep secrets, and the Israelis have been working on gathering information for many, many years now. So that would be Hezbollah's weakest link, but otherwise, Hezbollah is prepared. So a war with Lebanon would not be successful with Israel. A missile and exchanges with Iran would lead to defeat for the Israelis. They've already lost in Gaza. They've slaughtered people, which I think has destroyed Israel. Its image across the world has been destroyed. That's a defeat. Killing people, maybe it's a success for some people in Israel, maybe many people in Israel, but it's for those who are looking from the outside, it's a defeat for the Israeli regime. And the Red Sea has also not gone well. So the only thing that makes sense for Israel, for Netanyahu, is to escalate. And escalation will only make it worse for Israel unless they're able to get the Americans to enter the war. If that happens, then we could have a global economic meltdown because the Americans target Iran or Hezbollah. Iraqi resistance would sweep the Americans away from Iraq. People in Iraq are outraged about what happened to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. The mood has changed. But if the Americans target Iran, not only would they be swept away from Iraq, but their assets in the Persian Gulf region would all be wiped out, but so would the regimes that host them. So all those oil and gas producers, they won't have any more oil and gas to sell. And that would be catastrophic for the world. So I think there's still sane people in Western capitals who recognize this. And I think that after the Iranian missile strike, the mood in the West has changed a bit, although you would know better. because I've been traveling a lot and I've been moving around a lot, and I haven't actually been following up on the news itself as much as I normally would because of the situation. But we'll have to wait and see. The biggest question is, do the Americans want to do the foolish thing and fall into Netanyahu's trap? Because as I said, Netanyahu doesn't care about the Americans. He doesn't care about the United States. I mean, the very fact that he used electronic devices made by brands that are affiliated to the West and infiltrated supply chains, and the West did nothing about it. That means that he doesn't care about the West because Western brands are now going to be more suspect, especially since the West didn't respond and react. Who does this benefit? It benefits countries like China. And I mean, I know people around me and myself, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to be using Western goods anymore out of concern. So Israel doesn't care about Western companies. They don't care about Western brands. They don't care about Western citizens or anything like that. So the question is whether the Americans enter it or not. If they do, that would mean a catastrophe for the world. If they don't, Israel, Netanyahu will lose the war.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot at stake there, to say the least. And, speaking about the mood in the West, it's been interesting to watch. And I think it may be a little bit different if the US currently had a sitting president who gave the appearance of being in charge, because currently we're looking at Joe Biden going, we know he's not running the show. We have these two top contenders, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who are extremely pro-Israel. And what I think is interesting is that you look at the Biden administration, the members of it, the Antony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, who seem to be calling the shots. And on the surface, right, they've been telling Israel, well, not necessarily telling Israel, telling everyone we want to see de-escalation. But then you had a report come out from Politico this week saying that in secret, they were telling Israel, now is the time to move on Lebanon, right? Now is the time to continue, and actually supporting them. What I also thought was notable is that this week we had Lebanon's foreign minister come out. He spoke out in a recent interview with CNN, and he revealed that Hezbollah Secretary General Syed Hassan Nasrallah agreed to a U.S. and French proposed 21-day ceasefire with Israel right before Israel killed him. Now, I know that there's kind of been some back and forth on whether that was actually the case, but I mean, what do you make of Israel's decision to assassinate Nasrallah, a beloved longtime leader, not just for Hezbollah or for the people of Lebanon, but really for the region? And as you were noting, I mean, that's going to galvanize a whole number of people who may not have previously been too interested in the resistance. Now they're going to look at it and say, oh no, we have a clear enemy, and they are clearly targeting us, as Israel is with these ongoing bombings.
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely. They've made Hezbollah, in my opinion, stronger as a result of the assassination. Assassinating the senior commanders, I mean, it is a tragedy, but Hezbollah has many young commanders. And young commanders, perhaps in today's world with the new technologies, they may be more innovative anyway. But Syed Hassan Nasrallah was a towering figure, widely respected, and they've made him into a martyr. And therefore, Hezbollah's influence, the name Hezbollah, the name Syed Hassan Nasrallah, is going to have much greater influence. And we already see that in Iraq. We see people in Iraq who've been traditionally, as you were pointing out, quiet and indifferent or more silent and minding their own personal affairs, that they've come to the streets. And they're outraged and they show hostility not just towards Israel, but towards Israel supporters. Israel is sacrificing the West because this is all being done in the name of the West, because as you pointed out, the West is behind it. Even in the case of Lebanon, they were actually saying, go for it. So, in my opinion, while it is Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's loss it's huge, it's massive, It's, it's very painful for people like myself. But I think that in the bigger picture, it has only made him more important. It has made Hezbollah more popular, and it is only going to make things worse for the Israeli regime. But again, I don't think Netanyahu is calculating that way. Netanyahu, if he strikes Iran, I know that he knows. I'm pretty sure. I'm confident that he will be on the receiving end of a much bigger attack. But what Netanyahu is trying to do is expand the war so that others get involved. So he's destroying Israel. He's destroying the regime effectively. It's death by 1,000 cuts. But I think in his desperation, what he's trying to do is just see what he can do and try to turn this into a regional war. So if the world falls apart, that's fine with it.
Yeah, it's almost kind of fascinating to watch. I know that a lot of times we talk about the US empire, right? All of the moves it is making, the countries it has invaded around the world that are leading to the begin of its demise. And then you look at someone like Netanyahu, and it's almost like he is his own empire, and he just doesn't even know when to stop, has gotten so reckless, so genocidal, and the US is not so far holding him to account or pulling him back. Certainly a lot at stake here all around to continue to keep an eye on. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Syed Mohammed Mirandi, a professor of English literature at the University of Tehran. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. And if you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. You can also check out my new weekly series called Sanctioned, which is available for my paid monthly subscribers on both Substack and Patreon. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.